What happens tomorrow? Is the chamber going to keep running it for another month until this RFP is continued, or what happens tomorrow? Are you guys really done?
Chris, I am totally surprised of certain selectmen tonight. Would start thinking outside of the box. And the town manager. We have been talking about this issue for almost 8 months. I don't care if you believe me, if you don't, but I speak from my heart and what I do for the town and for the community. We're going to continue there, but we're not going to continue to lose money. And people in this room need to understand that we need to work together and not against one another.
That's what I need.
And that's it.
That item up now, we disenfranchise somebody who's planning to come to the meeting a little bit later versus at that time.
Just a motion. Hey, you spent 3 years being quiet. Take the meeting.
Commission, we have Michelle Stilwell-Lecter has submitted a volunteer application for the Conservation Commission. There is one vacant position to be filled on that commission. I know we've interviewed Michelle for other committees. Did we want to take over appointment for this one?
I think we all know her. She could probably stand up. I just soon put her on there. If she'd like to be on it, put her on it.
I'll move we appoint Michelle Stivaleta to the Conservation Commission.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? 4-1.
Manager and at 4:30, and you weren't there apparently, and left a message.
Somebody in the office.
Anyway, it's another example of the chairman of this board changing well-established procedures of this board without consulting with the board first, and it just appalls me.
Did I change anything here?
Was it on the agenda?
I wasn't even aware of it.
It's not on our agenda. You've been a selectman for a number of years now. You have to be aware of it.
I take full responsibility for that oversight, Jim, and
I'm going to move we schedule a special public hearing for Monday evening in this room, 7 o'clock, to listen to public input on the annual town meeting warrant articles.
In the last Wednesday's meeting of the board, the Ordinance Review Committee on Extraction Rights on Water, the town's attorney at one point was asked by the chairman of the board whether or not there was a possibility that state law or international law might preempt or take precedence over portions of the town ordinance, and her answer was yes, there always was that possibility. But I don't think that any of the voting members of the ordinance committee, and I don't know how many of you realize or have looked at this situation, so I thought I'd bring 2 points to you tonight. The first one is there is a state statute called groundwater rights, and it limits protection to pre-existing domestic household users. There's been a court case, Maddox versus Giles, which the attorney put in a rebuttal of the rights-based ordinance, which established absolute dominion. This ground protection ordinance will protect pre-existing domestic households from that, but not businesses, and not anybody that drills a well or hooks up to the water district afterward. So whether or not that would preempt home rule, I don't know, but that's something that I think that you should look at. The second one, which is more important, is legislation that's going through the House now. It was passed taken up by the House on Friday and by the Senate on Monday, and that's LD 1310, which is resolved relating to a review of international trade agreements and the management of groundwater resources. And what they're doing, they've been looking at this for about a year now. What they're doing is they're tasking the Water Resources Planning Committee, the Office of the Attorney General, and the Citizen Trade Policy Commission, I'll read it here, shall conduct an examination of the potential legal impacts of international trade agreements on the state's ability to manage its groundwater resources, including but not limited to the potential consequences of permitting foreign companies to extract groundwater. What they're afraid of is if they allow a foreign company to come in and start extracting water, that at some point some of these international trade agreements, not necessarily NAFTA, there's some other ones, Sino-Japanese and so forth, there's some that have been done in Asia, that give foreign companies more rights than domestic companies as far as property rights go. And so if you could stop them from drilling at some point, let's say that you needed the water, the town needed the water, you could stop them from drilling, but you might have to compensate them. And if you're looking at compensating an 800 million Nestle Waters, is what they took in 2006 or 2007, almost $1 billion, compensating them for loss of future profits, for loss of ability to be able to compete in the marketplace and so forth. That could be sizable. Thank you.
Could they buy the land privately and not go through the KK&W at all and just pump from the land that they purchase and not pay us a dime for it?
That's the nature of the regulatory ordinance, is that if private water extractors wanted to extract within the town, then the regulatory ordinance, if passed, would regulate that activity.
So they would be able to do that. They wouldn't have to go through KK&W. They could do it privately on their own.
I've seen any contracts, I don't know the acts, I'm speaking hypothetically.
Right, I am too.
The whole point is of having a regulatory ordinance is if people, private property owners, wish to extract water from beneath their property, then the whole point of the regulatory ordinance would be to govern, regulate.
So they could do it. They don't have to go through KK&W.
If it's not KK&W's property.
Right. If it was piped into Sanford, let's say they did do that, that scenario does come to be, and they pipe it into Sanford directly, does it then go under international law because it passes the town line?
Again, that's something that
you'd have to look into.
Hypotheticals, I really have to see the facts of those particular cases, and in the event that arises, and that's something that I'm instructed to look into, of course.
We would have to deal with it after the fact. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to express some concern, of course, about the Ordinance Review Committee meeting that was televised. And I don't know if the board has the power to do this, but I would like to see you direct them to do two types of ordinance. One, which they obviously are determined to do with regulation, but also include one for people that would like to have water extraction restricted and used only for public purposes and municipal purposes.
A resident of Wells, and I want to address the board on the issue of the Ordinance Review Committee's work that's going on at this moment on the work of water extraction. I attended the committee meeting last week, and I was appalled to watch clearly the Ordinance Review Committee working in conjunction with Nestle to craft an ordinance that pleases Nestle. For instance, the Nestle attorney who spoke referred to the copy of the ordinance he had received the day before. Why is our Ordinance Review Committee sending a copy of its draft ordinance to that corporation before it's even passed? Later in the meeting, after public comment was long since over, this attorney for Nestle was permitted to speak again, and he kept suggesting changes in the language. At one point, the chair of the Ordinance Committee replied, "So if we change that wording, that works for you?" Who are they representing? They're supposed to be drafting an ordinance to protect the town of Wells, and it seems clear to me that they're unable to do this. And I'm asking this board to withdraw the charge they've given that committee to draft a water extraction ordinance for this town. They're clearly incapable of doing that. Thank you.
I'm also concerned because I was at the ORC meeting the other day. Number one, I was kind of wondering how did they get a copy of it? I mean, that should be something we should probably answer, that question. Why our attorney was also going in with some of these changes. And if I also would like to know if the selectmen are going to publish this ordinance on a full-page ad like they did the rights-based ordinance, because everybody does need to have it at the house to see it. Not everybody has a computer, and this way they could really study it and understand what's going on. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Hopefully we all know that there's a moratorium on water sale or extraction until November 4. We also know there's a proposed ordinance regulating large extraction of water that presumably would be voted on November 3. Well, let's look at it this way. If the proposed ordinance is on the ballot and passes, then large-scale water extraction can commence. However, if the proposal is on the ordinance and fails to pass, the moratorium lapses the very same day, and yet again, the way for extraction is open. This is a win-win situation for Poland Springs, no matter how you put it together. It's like heads they win, tails I lose. And as a person that's opposed to any extraction, that's how I feel about it. My hope would be that an ordinance is for prohibiting large-scale extraction of water would be presented as an option. At the very least, I would hope that the moratorium will be extended way beyond November 4 in case the ordinance failed, giving the public a chance for a second shot at this. I think you can tell people are pretty mad, pretty upset that their water is going to be sold. And I hope that this gets out to the public.